So we had three conversation topics on the question on the table. What is the thesis of the text? What is your working definition of Pan-Africanism? And what new understandings or deeper understandings of Pan-Africanism did you gain through the engagement of the text? Who would like to share what was discussed in your breakout rooms? Elizabeth, what was discussed in your guys' breakout room?
Basically, well, I think that the thesis was to focus on African people, like basically being one and being connected through unity and their African roots.
Who else wants to share what was discussed in their breakout groups, either pertaining to your definition of Pan Africanism or a deeper understanding of Pan Africanism? Zachary, what was discussed in your group? Zachary Ibarra, what was discussed in your breakout groups? Okay. So Zach doesn't have a mic. Sean, how about you? What was discussed in your breakout room?
Well, what the previous person said is pretty much my basic understanding of Pan-Africanism. The fact that people of African descent have their race in common, and they should be unified.
Okay. All right, bet. So let's do this thing. Let me jump into my notes, and then from there we'll transition into our fishbowl. I believe the majority of you, though, have already fishbowl, so I don't know how many of you left would have to go. But this is a book that is a collection of speeches given by Stokely Carmichael, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, most recently known as Kwame Ture. The book's entitled Stokely Speaks. The speech that you read was titled From Black Power to Pan-Africanism. So before we get too deep into the text itself, I want to provide you some insight into my personal engagement with Pan-Africanism. Um, so for me, I have engaged with Pan-Africanism from two different paradigms, right? Well, first I would say for over 5 years, maybe anywhere from 5 to 10 years, I was an organizer with an organization called the All African People's Revolutionary Party. The three central figures of this organization were Kwame Ture, Kwame Nkrumah, who is mentioned in the speech, and then Sekou Ture, who was also mentioned in the speech. Now, Kwame Nkrumah was the president of independent Ghana. Sekou Touré was the president of Guinea. Stokely Carmichael was forced out of the United States, and he ended up in Ghana, then Guinea, where he was trained by Kwame Touré. Sorry, when he was trained by Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré, and he changed his name to Kwame Touré to honor both Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré. The three of them formed the organization, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and Kwame Ture brought the organization to the United States. It was designed to be a college organizing organization that did have roots in the community, but the thrust of it was to organize the African intelligentsia, so the African intellectual class, right? And at the time I was doing my undergrad at Cal State LA, I was a member of the organization, and Cal State LA was the hub in Southern California of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Now, they articulate Pan Africanism as an objective, and their objective is the total liberation and unification of Africa and African people under scientific socialism. So, all of their programming, all of their political education, and all of their organizing efforts would be centered around accomplishing the objective of liberation, unification under scientific socialism of not only Africa, the continent itself, but of African people as well. So, from a practical, hands-on, organizational standpoint, that was my engagement with Pan Africanism. On the other side, from an intellectual standpoint, one second. All right, my fault, y'all. So from an intellectual standpoint, right, I have my bachelor's in Pan-Africanism. I have my master's in Pan-Africanism. My thesis, or sorry, my dissertation for my Ph.D. is on developing a Pan-African pedagogy. So a pedagogy is just a method or a style of teaching, approach to teaching. So what I'm developing and cultivating is a Pan-African style or approach to education. Developing a curriculum and a teaching style that would address all African peoples throughout the globe. A lot of what I do within this class and my engagement with you is based on the Pan-African pedagogy that I'm seeking to cultivate. In my personal life, right? I was born here in the States. I consider myself at best an African in America. My wife, she was born in the States, but her family is from Eritrea, right? They migrated here to the Americas. So my household is a Pan-African household, right? My children are raised in a Pan-African culture, understanding their diasporic influence and then their continental connection through their grandparents. So for me, at a multiplicity of levels, Pan-Africanism really organizes and informs my life. Above my right shoulder, that red, black, and green flag is the flag of Pan-Africanism. So indeed, this is my North Star, if you will, for the way that I move through the world, right? So to get to the text, he starts off by providing us with a working definition of Pan-Africanism. And I'll read a brief portion of it. Pan-Africanism is grounded in the belief that Africa is one. The artificial borders being the result of the Berlin Conference. This is the conference in 1818 where they decided what European country would determine what European country would colonize what part of Africa, right? So this is we're talking about those fake borders that's been carved up by Europe. The Berlin Conference, where European powers carved up the continent and divided the spoils among themselves. Pan-Africanism is grounded in the belief that all African people, wherever we may be, are one, and as Dr. Nkrumah says, belong to the African nation. Our dispersal, so our separation, our movement outside of the continent, was the result of European imperialism and racism. So this is something I want to counter, and it's something I also want to critique. And this is a bifurcation or a separation that I have in my understandings of Pan-Africanism from Kwame Ture and a lot of people who would consider themselves Pan-Africanists. So he's saying that this dispersal, this separation, this movement is the result of European invasion and colonization, right? Now, you all should know, like I know because you're in this class, that the first large-scale migration outside of Africa, I believe it could be traced back 200,000 years ago, right? You also know from being in this class that Abu Bakr II, the brother of Mansa Musa, he made his journey to the Western Hemisphere to the Americas 2 centuries prior to Christopher Columbus, right? So this idea of the dispersion being a byproduct of European invasion, I feel is a misnomer, right? I feel it's a false realization or a false interpretation of our African history, right? So he also follows up and says that we should not start our experience with contacts with Europeans, and I'll read it where he says this, right? The historical conditions must be seen in correct perspective. Pan-Africanists study the history of Africa and her people. African history is rarely recorded as the history of Africans. It is usually reported as an offshoot of European history. Consequently, when we have studied our history, the starting point has usually been the discovery of Africans by Europeans. Thus, our brothers and sisters in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, right, in the Caribbean, begin our history with slavery. And on the continent, we begin with colonialism. So, one, he's saying Pan-Africanists must study our historical condition, right? We must understand African history. And he says, rarely is African history told from the vantage point of the African people, right? So think about the counter narrative, right? Counter storytelling. He says that because it's rarely told from the vantage point of African people, the start of African history is always contact with Europeans. So for Africans in the Americas, that contact is enslavement, right? For Africans in the continent, that contact is colonization, right? And he says this is an incorrect point of analysis. But what I find interesting is he does the same thing with the history of Pan-Africanism, right? Because he says that dispersion took place because of what? European invasion. So what he's critiquing African historians of doing as far as starting African history with European contact, he's doing the same thing with the start of Pan-Africanism, right? And what I'm asserting, that Pan-Africans started way before European contact. Pan-Africans started way before Europeans set their foot in the African soil, right? Pan-Africans started when the first African migrated outside of Africa. That's when the true diaspora took place. And that's not because of European invasion. That's just because of African people being explorative, right? Africa had a very strong nautical culture to start off with. And when I say a nautical culture, that's like a boat making culture, right? They navigated through the seas. And what allowed them to be very efficient in their nautical culture was their understanding of the stars, the understanding of astrology. So they know how to navigate north, east, south, and west by being able to read the stars as a map. And this same science allowed them to migrate throughout Africa, right? So this idea of migration, this idea of dispersal, again, happens way before European contact. And I challenge not only Kwame Ture, but most Pan-Africanists who like to start this idea and this notion of Pan-Africanism as a offshoot, as a byproduct of European invasion. For me, at best, European invasion was an interruption into Pan-Africanism, right? And what it may have done, while it interrupted this Pan-Africanist move, it may, in a certain regard, accelerated it, right? Because of invasion, because of exploitation, because of colonization, the need for Pan-Africanism becomes more of a necessity because we need to get rid of these foreign entities in our land, right? But he does say, right, all African resistance, be it subconscious or conscious, is moving towards a Pan-African paradigm, right? And that I do agree with. He also mentions all the African intellectual giants who, as he says, are baptized in Pan-Africanism, and he names off W.E.B. Du Bois, Henry Sylvester Williams, Joseph Casey Hayford, George Padmore, Marcus Garvey, Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, Ben Bella, Ahmed Sekou Toure, and President Kwame Nkrumah as individuals or African giants who've all been baptized by Pan-Africanism. Okay. Kwame does a great job of charting the evolution of Pan-Africanism, charting the victories of Pan-Africanism, right? And he says this. He says that. So thus, Pan-Africanism remained on the level of theories and protestations. Today, even with nominal independence on our continent, Pan-Africanism finds fertile ground. When Casey Hayford was calling out to his brothers across the Atlantic, Ghana was the Gold Coast and Britain her master. So what he's saying is when this brother Casey Hayford was trying to advocate for a Pan-African ideal, right, from the Western Hemisphere to Africa, Ghana was considered the Gold Coast. It was still colonized, and Britain still ran Ghana, right? But check out how it evolves. When Kwame Nkrumah stretched out his hands to his brothers, so Kwame Nkrumah is in Africa, stretching out his hands to his brothers across the Atlantic on the Western Hemisphere, right? Ghana was independent, and Nkrumah her leader. So again, the evolution. So when Casey Hayford is calling for African Union, when he's calling for Pan-Africanism, Ghana is colonized by Britain. When Kwame Nkrumah is calling for Pan-Africanism, he has liberated Ghana and is now the president of Ghana, okay? When Marcus Garvey said that unless Africa is free, Africans the world over would not be free, he was answered by a counter-revolutionary president, King of Liberia, who wanted no relations with his brothers, right? So Marcus Garvey, operating predominantly out of Jamaica and out of the Americas, is calling for a Pan-Africanist ideal. The president of Liberia, and I don't know if you guys know the history of Liberia. So during the Reconstruction era, where they just ended enslavement and they're trying to figure out what to do with African people, right? A contingent of African people repatriated and moved back to Africa, specifically in Liberia. And they, under this idea that they will colonize Africa, colonize Liberia for the advancement of African people. So what Kwame Ture is saying, right, the president of Liberia didn't want anything to do with Marcus Garvey's call for Pan-Africanism. So mind you, this country, this nation state of Liberia is largely funded by American and Western interests, right? So they're going to do the will of what those who are paying them and giving them their independence dictates, right? So they're not going to be so willing to latch onto these ideas of Pan-Africanism that Marcus Garvey is calling for, right? But check out the evolution, okay? But Brother Malcolm X addressed the Organization of African Unity. The Organization of African Unity is all the African heads of state at that time in the 60s, right? So again, the refusal of the King of Liberia to answer Marcus Garvey's Pan-African call evolves into Malcolm X being able to travel from the Western Hemisphere to Africa and meet with the African Union. He says, Marcus Garvey never set foot on Africa, but Brother Malcolm was treated like a shining African prince. Africans of the diaspora have been moving at a rapid pace towards Pan-Africanism, but very few people have analyzed that movement correctly. Brother Malcolm told us we needed black nationalism. So think back to the speech, The Ballot and the Bullet, where he's calling for black nationalism, right? But black nationalism is African nationalism, because the black man is the African and the African is the black man. Thus, Brother Malcolm's black nationalism is really African nationalism. African nationalism finds its highest aspirations in Pan-Africanism. So what Kwame is arguing here, and this should make sense to y'all because you read The Ballot or the Bullet. He's saying what really Malcolm is articulating in that speech through his calls for black nationalism is truly Pan-Africanism, okay? So again, you see the evolutions, you see the victories, you see the development of this Pan-Africanism shifting from a theory to a more of a material ideal. Another thing that Kwame wants to separate himself from, he feels that a lot of Pan-Africanists of his time are okay with not emphasizing the land of Africa in this notion of Pan-Africanism, right? He says, you know, a lot of people feel that you don't have to move back to Africa to be a Pan-Africanist. He wants to push back on that ideal. And he says he understands that someone may not have the resources or the opportunity to move to Africa and still be considered a Pan-Africanist, but you must keep the land of Africa at the forefront of your movement, of your organization, and your consciousness, right? The majority, I'll say damn near all revolutionary movements all boil down to a question of land, right? And for Kwame, we cannot leave Africa out of the picture as we advocate for and build towards our Pan-Africanism. And then he closes his speech with a call to action, but also what I would call a realistic optimism, right? And I'll read the final paragraph. The African for the last 500 years has known neither peace nor justice. His wealth, his labor have built Western Europe and America. These forces are harnessed for our benefit. When these forces are harnessed for our benefit, the reconstruction of Mother Africa will be worthy of her glorious past. The setback in Ghana is no cause for dismay. So when he's talking about the setback in Ghana, remember how I mentioned Kwame Nkrumah is the president of liberated Ghana, I believe in 1966. I believe in 2 years, Western interests would be able to successfully stage a coup d'etat removing Kwame Nkrumah out of the seat of power in Ghana, where he's forced to flee to Guinea, where Sekou Toure would give him refuge, and instead of making him as a subordinate, Sekou Toure offers him a seat as a co-king or co-president of Guinea, right? So Kwame Toure is saying, that little coup d'etat that they pulled in Ghana, that's a small step back. There's no need for dismay, right? Pan-Africanists know that setbacks are not new to the African struggle. This one has not even been long. We are not afraid of the inevitable bloodshed, for beyond it, we see victory in the air. So again, that's that realistic optimism, right? I know that there will be victory, but I also know that there will be some bloodshed that has to take place for us to secure this victory. So we'll put my notes on pause there. We'll transition into your fishbowl. Again, I believe majority of y'all should have already fishbowl, but we'll give the opportunities for those who haven't. Okay. Does anybody want to volunteer or need to volunteer for the fishbowl?
I'll go.
Okay, Elizabeth, got you.
I could also go.
All right, Ariel, got you. Anyone else? I'll call that random. Let me know if you have gone twice already. And then if not, we'll just go with Elizabeth and Ariel. Bridget, have you gone twice for your fishbowl?
Yeah, I already finished mine.
Thank you, Bridget. Bianca, how about you? Have you gone twice for your fishbowl?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bianca. Jessica, have you gone twice?
Yeah, I have.
Thank you, Jessica. Daisy, have you gone twice?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Daisy. Giovanni, I want to say you've gone twice. Am I correct?
Yeah, I've gone twice.
Thank you, Giovanni. Myrelli, have you gone twice?
Yes, I have.
I believe, Jessica, you've gone twice, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we got, yeah.
Or Marsh as well.
Yeah, I was talking to Marsh. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's two of y'all.
Yes. Thank you.
Heather, you've gone twice also, correct? Heather Matterson, have you gone twice? Okay. Alyssa, have you gone twice?
Yes.
Cool. And Caesar, have you gone twice?
Yeah.
Cool. Ryan, have you gone twice?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we'll just go with Elizabeth and Ariel to close out our fishbowl. So whoever wants to start off, it's on you.
I'll go ahead and start. So I just wanted to say something I took from the reading is where it says history must precede the period of colonialism and slavery. And as a history major, I see the focus on European history in the Western Hemisphere, and I agree with the text that the history of Africans should be explored and taught in order to better understand the past.
Ariel?
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that. Yeah, I thought that was actually very important. It's not just like when they teach us like for history, it's not like, oh, it's just like what the Europeans saw, but actually where everyone actually originates from. Like Africa was the main country. It's like where everyone expanded from, and not just like, oh, they took people out of there and like used them to create other civilizations.
Yeah. I think you guys bring up a really good point in the space of being attentive to how we tell history. And Frantz Fanon is a brilliant Martinican philosopher and colonial critic. And he says that each generation must be attentive to their present moment or betray it, right? And if we are attentive to our present moment and what's going on, there's two conversations taking place, right? Here in the West Coast, for the most part, we have made ethnic studies a requirement at the junior college level and at the Cal State level, right? Which does a particular job of telling history in a particular way. Okay. On the other side of the spectrum, particularly in the Midwest, in the South, right? There's conversations around preventing theories like critical race theory from being told in schools, right? So if you kind of take away the propaganda of it all and take away the rhetoric and the jargons, what this really is a conversation around is how will we tell history, right? What type of history will be acceptable for the generations to come, right? I don't know if you guys remember, but I said in earlier in the semester, in your K through 12, you don't really learn history, you learn social science, right? It's about a socialization process. It's about getting you to become good citizens, right? So this debate about how we tell our history is vastly important. And oftentimes, these legislations get moved and the people who it impacts most are unaware of it. So really, who it impacts most is y'all, right? Because you are the ones in the schools. You're the ones in this Cal State system right now that, as the things stand now, your ethnic studies courses becomes a requirement, right? But there's a whole segment of the population in a certain portion of our country that won't be privy to this information, right? That, and just to be clear, right, critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12. At best, you may find it at a college campus. Critical race theory is really a theory that comes out of the law. A bunch of lawyers came up with this theory, right? So this fear and this apprehension is not even warranted. But it very much comes down to a telling of history. Now, I want to kind of touch back on Elizabeth, her musing on the telling of history, especially for African people, cannot start in enslavement. And I want to ask the class this question. And I believe this is true for all Pan-African Studies courses, but I don't know if you took any other ones outside of the one in this class, right? But in this course, we did not start the history of Africa with enslavement, right? We started with, one, the question of who African people are prior to European contact, right? We started with the teaching of Ptah-hotep, the oldest book in the world. We started with these concepts of Ma'at, right? So where we started the radix point of African history had nothing to do with the European. So my question to you is, what does that approach, what did that approach do for you in your understanding of African history? Being able to engage thoughts like the teachings of Ptah-hotep, being able to engage concepts like Ma'at. How did that shape your understanding of African people juxtaposed to the prior conversation that you may have around African people? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
I think for me, the fact that we begin with the history of it allows me to understand and be more empathetic with the culture. I feel like when you go around it and you go straight to the European invasion, you're kind of completely like taken away from the humanity of the African people. So I think it kind of changed my entire perspective. It made me want to know them more. It made me want to understand why these teachings weren't what the world followed, you know? So it's a good start.
Yeah, thank you. I think really, Jessica, what you said was what I was looking for. The humanity piece, right? And this is why, for me, it's important that we don't refer to African people as slaves because it strips them of their humanity, right? So at best, formerly enslaved, right? Or people who were enslaved, right? Because again, enslavement is an experience. It's not an ontological definition. When you call someone a slave, that's encapsulating their whole experience, their whole being into a servitude of someone else, right? So again, African people cannot be slaves, right? Because to use that terminology is to strip them of their humanity. I'm curious to hear from others though. What did starting with Kemet, starting with Ma'at, starting with the teaching of Ptah-hotep, how did that shape your view of African people?
Like usually like in history class, they'll like start off with like, oh, they'll say they're just slaves. Like nah, when you taught us is like nah, they were doctors, they were healers, they were, people that yeah, they just wanted to help their people. We don't hear anything about that, so it was good to finally get, some things from that side of it.
I'm gonna put you on blast, Ryan, and only because I've sat in your shoes, right? I've been in these classrooms. Fortunately for you, you're not the only black in this class, but it's been times for myself where I'm the only black person in the class, right? And so, what did this telling of African history do for your self-esteem in the classroom, juxtaposed to just hearing the stories about African people being slaves? Like, how did it situate your confidence? How did that situate your comfortability? How did that situate your understanding of yourself, learning something about your people that goes beyond enslavement?
To be honest, it give you like a batter in your back because you realize like, yo, there's so many great people out there even before slavery. It's like, and I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. But nah, it just put that batter in your back to be like, man, you could, like, these people devoted their lives to just helping other people. So you don't really hear too much about that. So it just makes you want to do somewhat the same thing as well.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing. Another thing I want to bring to your attention, right? So, Jessica, if you don't mind, what is your ethnic background? I'm sorry, Jessica Marsh. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm Mexican. I do have some European descent on my dad's side, but I'm not exactly sure what it is.
Okay. So, and the only reason I ask, right? So, Jessica says she's Mexican with a little trace of European descent. Ryan's black, right? I bring this up to say that oftentimes when you hear about ethnic studies, right, they position it as something that will only benefit the ethnic group. So if you're in a Pan-African studies class, if you're in a black studies class, that's only going to benefit the black students in the classroom, right? Clearly, Jessica ain't black, and she could speak to how being able to trace African people's history beyond slavery is beneficial for her, right? Me presenting African people's history beyond enslavement is part of that Pan-African pedagogy that I'm developing, right? So I bring this up to say it's not about just edifying black folks, although that will be a byproduct of focusing on the byproduct of us telling our history the appropriate way, right? It's really about a course correct in society that benefits everyone. Because like it or not, even white folks are being trapped and damaged by this particular telling of history. I'm thinking about the Kyle Rittenhouse case, right? To me, which you all should be attentive to in that case, is the victims. Who were the victims in that case? Although the judge would not allow them to be called victims, who were the victims? Nobody knows?
Were they the two people that died?
Yeah. What were their nationality? What did they look like?
That I'm actually not too sure. I don't want to say black because that would just assume, but I'm not too sure. Is it okay if I could look it up right now?
Yeah, if you want to, go for it. Please do. And you're right, they're not black. Just to narrow down your search. It was at a Black Lives Matter rally, but the victims were not black.
They were white.
Thank you. They were white. So think about this. Think about this. And think about this from a standpoint of justice, okay? People are protesting because an unjust act was done to a black body, right? Everyone comes out to protest this injustice. You have one individual who could drive across multiple states and enact his form of justice as he sees fit, right? Under the guise of trying to protect property, right? And he kills 2 people, injures a third, goes to trial, and is found not guilty, right? So the lack of injustice that starts this whole thing produces another injustice. But this time, the victims weren't black bodies, they were white people, right? Who were advocating for the human rights of black people. So to me, what this is telling you, no matter who you are. No matter who you are, black, white, Mexican, yada, 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 it don't matter. If you go against this version of what we deem is acceptable, what we deem is right, right? You're going to witness the same, experience the same fate as these black bodies who we say don't matter, right? So it's really not even about race at this point. One, you could say it's about justice and injustice. That's one way of putting it, right? You could say it's about righteousness and evil is another way to put it, right? But at this whole idea of the color bifurcation of everything being about race has been so far eroded. But it's still about maintaining white power, right? And this is what the Kyle Rittenhouse trial was about for me. No one, no matter who you are, is going to show that they're trying to challenge this system of white authority. Not even white folks, right? So I would encourage, especially those who occupy white bodies and want to be on the side of justice, to look at this situation a little bit more closely. Because now it impacts you, it impacts your children, it impacts your siblings, right? It's not just a black thing no more. It's about maintaining this very small idea that's called whiteness. And again, even white people can fall victim to this very small understanding of whiteness. This is a very, very dangerous place to be in. And I don't think, I'm trying to think, like, to my understanding of history, I want to say that this is unprecedented. I want to say. I could be wrong. But then again, right? So even in the freedom rides, there were white folks who were riding on those buses who got murdered as well. So maybe this is not unprecedented. Maybe this is just what they call history repeating. But I think this is something to be very attentive to, that society has kind of moved on from and are not really understanding the ramifications of what that meant. I'm curious to hear your other thoughts about the. We also have the video for those who watch the video. You could talk about that as well. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about either the speech or the video. Preferably somebody who we have not heard from. Bianca, what did you think about either the reading or the video?
I actually have to catch up on it today. Yeah.
Please get your journal in. Bridget, how about you? What did you think about either the video or the reading? Bridget Perez? Alyssa, what did you think about the reading or the video? Alyssa Cruz, what did you think about the video or the reading? All right, so for sake of time, please tell me if you had a chance to listen to the 6 songs for the group project. Raise your hand, give me a heads up or something. Just let me know. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, bet. So let's go this. For those who have chose, let's get through the. I can't hear you, Alyssa. I just see what you put in the chat. Okay. So Jessica, you said you got 3 of them. So let's go through the ones who chose. Who listed all the songs, and let me choose. Let me know what song you want. And then also, if you're in today's class, but you're typically in Monday's class, please let me know that also. Ryan, which song do you want?
Mama by Kendrick Lamar.
K. Dot. All right. Who else? Caesar, what song do you want?
Face the World by Nipsey Hussle.
Okay. Nip, Face the World. Jessica Juarez, what song did you want?
I don't have it up. I think it's Rhapsody or Raps.
Rhapsody? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Choice. Ariel, what song did you want?
I wanted to do the Kendrick Lamar one, Mama.
So Ariel, get Ryan's information before we get out of class today, so that way, because you guys are going to be in the group together.
Oh, Professor. Also, I'm in the other. I'm in Monday class usually.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay. So Jessica, do me a favor. Email me later on today, preferably after 3 o'clock if possible, and that way I can let you know who else is in your group. Okay, for Group A. Got Ariel. Elizabeth Camacho, which song did you want?
For Women by Nina Simone.
Okay. Jessica Marsh, what song did you want?
Can I do a Tupac White Man's World?
Mm-hmm. Tupac. Okay. Giovanni, what song did you want?
Can I do White Man's World by Tupac?
Tupac. So you and Jessica make sure to exchange information because you're in the same group, okay?
All right.
Who else? So is anybody else have their song picked out that I did not call on yet?
Yeah. Can I do For Women, Nina Simone?
Okay. And then are you in Group A or Group B, Sean?
I'm in Group B.
Okay, so you and Elizabeth make sure to exchange information because you're going to be in the same group. Zach, I got you down for Kendrick Lamar's Mama. So make sure that you exchange information with Ryan, okay?
And then can I do the song by Tupac also?
Yep.
Thank you.
So you and Giovanni and Jessica make sure to exchange information. I'm gonna be real with y'all. That's my favorite song by Pac, so don't fuck that one up, okay? Daisy, you want Nipsey? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Exactly. You're in Group A. So make sure to email me also after 3 o'clock, so that way I can let you know who else is in Group A in that song with you. Heather, you have Nipsey Hussle's Face the World. Okay, so make sure that you get with who else? Somebody else. Daisy. So you and Daisy have Nip together. So make sure that you guys exchange information too as well. Okay. Is there who else am I missing? So I don't see Alyssa. I don't see Mara Lee. I don't see Amir.
Excuse me, Professor.
Yes. Caesar. I'm sorry. Who do you want for your group?
For the Nipsey Hussle one.
Okay, Nip. So I think somebody else said Nip too. So Alyssa, you'll be the last one to do Nipsey Hussle, okay? So Nip is closed out. For Women, Mara Lee. Okay. Who is missing? Bridget, I don't see your name on here. Do you know what song you want?
Jess, can I do the For Women one?
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to read out the names that I have so that way you could be, so you would know what group that you're in. Okay. I have Ryan, Mama by Kendrick Lamar, Caesar, Nipsey Hussle's Face the World. Caesar, are you in Group A or Group B?
Well, usually I'm supposed to be in Group A, but sometimes I could be in B for right now.
Well, so here's the thing though, because I want you to stay in the group that you're supposed to be in. So I'm gonna put you with the people in Group A to form your group.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So we have you in Group A. We have Jessica Juarez, who's also in Group A doing Rhapsody. We have Ariel doing Kendrick Lamar's Mama. So Ariel, make sure you get with Ryan to exchange your information. Elizabeth is doing Nina Simone. Jessica Marsh is doing Tupac. Giovanni is doing Tupac, so make sure you guys exchange information. Sean is doing Nina Simone. So Sean, make sure you exchange information with Elizabeth. Zach is doing Kendrick Lamar's Mama. So Zach, make sure you get with Ryan and Ariel. Bianca is doing Tupac. So Bianca, get with Jessica and Giovanni. Daisy's doing Nipsey Hussle. Heather's doing Nipsey Hussle. Caesar's doing Nipsey Hussle. And Alyssa is doing Nipsey Hussle. So make sure Daisy, Heather, Caesar, and Alyssa, make sure you guys exchange contact information. Mara Lee is doing Nina Simone, and Bridget is doing Nina Simone. Did I mention everybody? Amir, you're in Group A, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm in Group B.
You're in Group B? What song do you want?
Mama by Kendrick Lamar.
All right, so you make sure you get with Ryan and Ariel and Zach. That'll form your guys' group. So everyone as of now should be put into groups. Far as what I'm looking for with your project, I don't care how you do it. It's totally up to you. I had students do a podcast. I had students do a poem. I have students actually put a song together. I had students do like an art presentation. It's totally up to you on how you do it. All I'm looking for is that you present the song's thesis, your analysis of the song, a contemporary analysis of the song, and you would present any questions to the audience that you may have, right? So just like you have those 4 components of your journals, that should be reflected in your presentation, okay? We'll meet next week. We'll have material to cover. That'll be our last week of material. And then we'll meet after that to do presentations again. That'll close out the semester. Whoever's left over from the presentations will meet the day of the final. So the last week of class will be presentations. The day of our final will be presentations. Okay. Is there any questions about anything that's been mentioned so far? Okay.
Professor, is the next reading, which one is it?
Good question. Let me pull up my thing real quick and I'll show you. Bear with me, y'all. We're gonna move into poetry to close out the semester. Typically I have a guest speaker, but I wasn't able to secure one for this semester, so bear with me as I load another poem. All right, so for next week, we will do this Black Love Supreme poem. I'm gonna add one more. It'll be a very short one, but do this one, and then I'll email you guys out this one along with the other one that I'm gonna attach, and I'm gonna also post it to the Google Classroom site. I didn't post it yet because I wanted to see if I was able to secure my homegirl who's a poet, but she just got hired with Columbia University, so she's not gonna be able to tap in for us. So read this one, and then I'm gonna attach one more poem, and I'll email them both out to you guys. This will be our last material that we'll cover for the semester, and then we'll just be doing the presentations to close out the rest of the semester. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns for me? All right, y'all.